Okay, this is tutorial 1, the basics of setting up and getting started in Quarter 1. We'll be looking at setting up SketchUp, loading a site, then creating some spaces on the fly and exporting basic area and cost information. So we're in SketchUp. The first thing we need to do is open a couple of windows. We need Outliner, which we'll be using all the time, and then also Layers. What we don't need is the character, so we'll remove that. We now want to add some site information, and we're going to use Geolocator, which is this icon here. Now this is standard SketchUp, so you type your site location in, select the area of our site, internet's a bit slow today, and grab that. As you see, that will now pull that image into SketchUp. What it pulls in is two images. In actual fact, one is a 2D graphic, and the other is Google Earth terrain, adds levels information. We can use Geolocator, or we can use JPEGs or sketches of our site, or a combination of the two. For example, on this site we're working on here, we've patched in some of the adjacent site information that doesn't appear on Google Earth and some sketch information that we want to use whilst designing our scheme. So here's our site, into which I've added some context, some adjacent buildings and some trees, so you can add whatever you like in SketchUp. Just to make life a bit easier for ourselves, I'm going to hide the Google Earth image. Just before we start to create spaces, we need to understand a basic Excel spreadsheet. Now this is Quarter 1's room data, so these are generic spaces contained within building types, and these could be anything that can be added to. The column I want to look at here is this column, which is the cost per meter squared, because this is what generates our information in related to basic area cost. So within these spaces, I've identified a cost per meter squared. Now this needs to be saved as a CSV file, because that is what's imported into Quarter 1, which is straightforward. You simply go into Save As, and save as a CSV. So now we want to start creating spaces. So it's very straightforward. We go to one of the shape tools, in this case rectangle, but it could be a circle or whatever shape space you want to produce. I'm going to extrude that using the pull tool to a height of, let's say, 4 meters. I now need to make this shape into a component. So if I right mouse click and then select all connected faces and then make that into a component. As you'll see, that component now appears in Outliner. Now if I want to make that into a room or a space, I right mouse click, go to Q1, convert to room, and as you can see, the space is converted into a room. Now that doesn't have a name, although it's identified the area. So if I can go back into right mouse click, I can go to Q1, rename room, and then pick from the pull down spreadsheet that appears. Now this is the information that relates back to the spreadsheet I showed you. Sometimes you'll need to load the spreadsheet. So this is an education building. We want to make this room type a laboratory. So we choose education, choose laboratory from the pull downs, click OK. That's produced the laboratory for us. If we want to add another room, again go through the same process. Extrude, select all connected faces, make a component. As you see, that component also appears in the Outliner. I'm now going to make that into a room and now give it a name. So again, go to Q1 record, rename room. Still an education project, but we're going to make that, say, a seminar room. Notice that these spaces are now both identified in Outliner. Now we need to give them a level. So in order to do that, we're going to move this space adjacent to the laboratory. And you'll notice when I did that the seminar room snapped away from the laboratory 150 millimeters. That's an automated feature of Quarter One which allows it to generate internal walls at a later date. These spaces need to be assigned to a level. So if we identify the spaces, either graphically or in Outliner, right mouse click and we make these into a group. And you'll see that within Outliner the group appears with the two spaces within it. Now in order for Q1 to work correctly, we need to rename that group. So if we go into Window and Entity Info, it'll bring up that group. We need to name them, let's say, Level 1. And you'll see they appear as Level 1 in the Outliner. So we can go on adding rooms on levels and renaming areas, but for the time being we'll stick with what we have to make life simple. So let's get rid of Entity Info. So let's say now we want to do an area or a cost check on our design. Go to Q1, which is in Plugins. Go down the right hand menu to Area Report. Click. And it will produce an area report for the building we have currently. As you see, it defines the levels, automatically numbers the rooms and an area of the spaces. So using this we can keep track as we design of how much floor area we have. What we can also produce is a cost report. What this does is identify total cost of our project so far against the areas that we've defined. Now that's it for this tutorial. We'll expand more on this on the master planning tutorial. The next tutorial we'll look at importing and manipulating spaces from a spreadsheet.